everyone, welcome to my review of Pete Docter's Monsters Inc. from 2001. So yes, here we are back again to talk about an animated film once again, and this time a Pixar film. So yes, I've done a few reviews, as we know, of some Pixar films. For example, The Incredibles 1 and 2, and Inside Out, Up as well, I believe. And yes, this is one of the first. Pixar films, the fourth Pixar feature film, and yes, you had Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, and then this. So this is also Pete Docter's directorial debut. So very interesting there. Yes, he would go on to do many different animated films as well. But yes, here we are with this film, and yes, as always, a spoilers review this will be. So if you haven't seen this film, simply it'd be recommended to kind of check out the film first and then come back to this review, because I wouldn't just kind of spoil the different plot details. There'll be a kind of brief discussion on a few things, but yes, with that said, as always, let's talk about this film. So Monsters Inc. Film that really it's definitely not one of the most popular Pixar films, and it's a film that I've seen many times actually. I'd say there's a few Pixar films that I've seen more, including definitely Toy Story, the first one, you could say Toy Story 2 as well. I've seen them many times, especially the first. But this is one of the Pixar films actually that I've seen more than most. So yes, very interesting. Despite that, it's not one of my kind of absolute favorite Pixar films, but I suppose that's because there's so many stunning Pixar works, at least in my opinion. Of course, many people agree, but there's still many I've not seen. Though, having said that, but yes, this film has never been one of my absolute kind of top 5 or so favorite Pixars, but I do really love this film actually, and I think now more than ever, this film is kind of really grown on me a little bit more actually than previous watches, and it's a film I guess I just kind of see different things in it, on this occasion, on this watch, and kind of a few things have kind of grown on me even more. So yeah, that's great, and I think this film, it's not one of the kind of top tier Pixars, I must say that now, but I do really love this film, as I say, and I think really very few flaws, just a few things that could have been even better to kind of allow the real, the highest kind of marks in that sense. But I do love this film, and I think it has so much going on, and it's a real, it's a lovely simple tale, friendship, and this kind of, this protection tale as well. How this works, but at the same time, it's this kind of really interesting, unique world that is created. Of course, Monstropolis, which is really funny. Kind of is the main kind of city, the world of these monsters, of course. And Monsters Inc. This company, and the chairman, is Water Noose, voiced by James Coburn, which is great to see. And yes, he's a great character. But yes, he's the chairman of this company, and yes, basically they harvest children's screams in order to kind of provide energy. So very unique little kind of concept there. And this being a spoilers review, one of the great things, that seeing this again, that I really love, it kind of reminded me of how great it is. This is the kind of the way they do that twist, of course. In the end, that's more powerful than scares is the children's laughs. So this is a lovely little kind of human, kind of twist, I feel, and the way that kind of culminates, once again, just kind of, it really, impressed me, and it's just a lovely kind of, way in which that kind of turns out. But yes, of course, they do originally think that scares, the most effective way to supply energy, creating the most energy they believe, and of course, this whole kind of, this kind of factory, if you will, has all these different monsters. It's a very effective kind of satire, kind of take, on this kind of in this way. And I think I love the kind of the way in which all these characters, these monsters, of course, these scarers, have their own kind of scoreboard, and they're kind of competing to get the most points, of course, by scaring, of course, the children. And of course, yes, you have Randall, who is kind of the eventually the villain, or one of the villains, of the film, voiced by Buscemi, and yes, basically Randall, of course, is one of the top competitors, and of course our main characters, Mike and Sully, are the two, protagonists really of the film. And of course, yes, they're kind of, especially Sully, he's kind of the top scarer, as we know. Of course, John Goodman voices Sully, and Billy Crystal voices, of course, Mike. And it's interesting actually as well. That Steve Buscemi and John Goodman both voice in this film, of course, being in different, The Big Lebowski, they're in together. So it's kind of, yeah, it's funny to see. And yes, this film has a great kind of voice cast. The voice acting here is brilliant. Especially I feel, John Goodman, as Sully. I think that's just perfect. And yes, these two characters, Mike and Sully, these friends who live together, and it's really charming, this film, in the way that's done. And of course, eventually, as we know, this one particular child escapes, just due to different events. Of course, I'm not going to go through the entire plot, but yes, she escapes from her kind of portal, and yes, as we know, the company try to, the CDA as well, try to, protect everyone. They think that they're kind of toxic, the children. So yes, Boo, who is, she's, and that's what, kind of what Sully calls her. She's the one who, throughout most of the film, they're on, she's kind of with Sully and Mike, and they kind of try to conceal her, and in the end, of course, things turn out very interestingly, and, she basically, kind of, as we know, Sully gets to still visit her, and it's very interesting there. And you don't actually see Boo in the end, but you see the kind of reaction, on Sully's face, and I think that's a really wonderful moment. Speaking on that kind of ending there, really, the way this film comes together, is really wonderful actually. And I think, had the film, kind of. Gone even further with these character relationships, the kind of development, perhaps, the depth to the film, and I think the ending could have really exceeded the way it came together. But in itself, in the way that this film kind of is in its narrative, I think it's still wonderful ending, and yes, I think it does move me. Although this film, I must say, it's not got too many flaws. The way in which the narrative plays out, I think it could have been even better, and then it would have been a truly, really moving film, maybe. And just personally for me, I think there are different Pixar films that really go to different, to greater heights. I feel, I think this one just kind of, could have done so, could have been one of their possibly top tier, kind of works if it had had a few of these things going in different ways, and if the narrative had been, the characters, for example, had been, to that level of some of the top Pixar films, that could have really become this kind of true masterpiece of Pixar. But I think, regardless, it's a wonderful film. I love the characters. I love the way in which the comedy, is injected, and this is something that Pixar does. On countless occasions, they kind of blend comedy with drama, and films that, of course, they are. They have loads of depth to them. They're very meaningful experiences, most of them that I have seen at least. But at the same time, they do have great moments of comedy, and very light-hearted at times. And yes, I think this film really has this kind of dry comedy to it. This dry humour, especially from Sully. Again, John Goodman really adding that kind of element to the film. And yes, you've got a few moments maybe of comedy that don't work perfectly, particularly early on, really. But other than that, as I said, I don't really have too many flaws with this film. It's just simply, there are things that could have been kind of tweaked, or kind of focused on even more, to really elevate the film to the kind of stunning, mind-blowing kind of level of Pixar Pixar work. But yes, as it is, I think this film it really is a stunning film, and I think it's a great film. The way in which these concepts, these ideas are explored, this whole world is created, and very compelling world this, and the way in which we have all these different details, these rules, perhaps, of these kind of course, the way, for example, in which they kind of scare the children, and then they kind of get the energy from them. It's really unique and kind of well thought out. I think it's very layered. I think it's great to kind of to get all this information, in the first act, and at the same time be a kind of light-hearted, relaxing, patient introduction to these characters. Of course, Waternoose as well. I love the kind of the way in which it's a very funny kind of a satire of kind of the workplace, and how in this film Sully, of course, kind of, and Waternoose, because Sully is the top scarer. Waternoose kind of is kind of sucking up to him as well, and the kind of banter there, but the kind of the really a very kind of funny way in which this relationship is, this kind of working relationship, and the kind of jokes there, the kind of maybe the kind of fake jokes, perhaps. It's a really interesting kind of take on this, and great to kind of see. I think Waternoose is a very, very memorable character. James Coburn, of course, voicing the chairman of Waternoose, but Billy Crystal as well. Great voice acting here. For Mike, and just the overall screenplay for this, the script is so great. I think Andrew Stanton and Dan Gerson, two main individuals working on this script, and I think it really is something very, very layered, unique, and something that's really so well thought out. This one, it does, of course, turn into this kind of fugitive kind of film, but it is as well the combination of different ideas really make it a very, very unique kind of film, Pixar film, actually. And I think the animation is great. Of course, really most Pixar films, I love the kind of animation, and some real great kind of visual moments in this film. And I think especially Sully, once again, Sully is kind of the standout here, and I think the way in which he is designed is really, really great in this film. And I think just every single detail, the movement to Sully, and I love the way in which it kind of has this comedy to the way he moves, even in different action scenes, and this film really turns into kind of a thrilling piece, a thrilling kind of at times adventure film, and of course this kind of on edge film. The tension in this film is really something else. Of course, when they're trying to hide Boo, the dramatic irony there, is really, really great. And of course, Randall, is a great kind of villain in this film. The way he kind of camouflages and lurks around, and kind of is on the case. These two. His two main protagonists, and yes, of course, Boo as well. I really loved what they've done with this character, and the relationship, especially with between Boo and Sully, is very, very heartfelt. It really is wonderful and human to see. Again, if this had been enhanced, it could have, as I say, really gone to real heights. But it still did. In the sense of, some of it could have been even further developed, I feel, and then it would have moved me even more. But it did, regardless, it did kind of move me, and definitely had me very emotional, especially the ending segment of the film, and very, very heartfelt indeed. It's just a wonderful film. This, I think, is a great film. In the sense of its ideas and how they're kind of enthralling to see, executed, the characters, the comedy and drama, and just these kind of horror elements as well. It's a really scary film at times, but at the same time it's a really a great comedy, I feel. And it's just a charming experience, this, and just to kind of see these characters, this world, and just to be along for the ride. You've got some great kind of chase sequences, and of course, the comedy as well, intertwining there. I really love this film, and I think, there's a few things that I think could have been even better, and as I say, it could have elevated the film to maybe around the top tier kind of Pixar heights, but regardless, it is a Pixar film that I love, and there are many Pixar films that I love, of course, but this is definitely better than a few of them that I've seen so far, and yes, I think it's a great, great film. So overall, of course, I love this film personally, and it may not be one of the kind of most popular Pixar films. It's not one of my kind of I'll say it now, it's not one of my kind of top 5, or so favourite Pixars, but I think despite that, it is a great, great film, and it's just a lovable film. This really charming, wonderfully, the beauty to it, and just this world, this creative, the kind of the way in which this is created, this world, and the way in which we're given information, in such a compelling way, but also a comedic way. I love the way in which the comedy is injected into this film. It's very, very layered, this script, and just the comedy alone, in which there's different points that are saying different things as well. About the workplace, for example, and just really great to see these different characters as well. Great designs to the different monsters and the different kind of traits they have, and all the different the techniques as well. The kind of signature moves, perhaps, that these different monsters have. And how they kind of scare. In the film. Yes, just to kind of to see this banter as well, this friendship, particularly between Mike and Sully, and the voice acting, the chemistry to it is great. And yes, taking everything into account, this film for me gets an extremely high rating of a 95%. This is a truly great animated film, and yes, I think there are a few things, as I say, that could have been even better. Just elevated the film to even greater heights. But even greater than a 95. Yes, indeed. I think. Having said that, I do love the film, and it's just a few things that could have been, as I say, even better. It's not really got any flaws. Very little flaws at all. Maybe just some of the comedy. In a couple of places early on could have been tweaked, and other than that, really it's just simply, a few things that could have been, pushed to greater heights, and therefore the film could have, really climbed, into the kind of maybe the kind of higher tier, maybe for example, maybe not the top tier, Pixar films, but higher tier Pixar's, because the top two actual, Pixar films, that I've seen anyway, currently are, cuts above all of the others. You could maybe piece that together, but yes, eventually I will do a ranking, and this film for me is one of their great films. I do think it's a great film. I love this film, and yes, more so now than I did previously actually, and yes, I think it's just a great film with great characters, the music as well, Randy Newman, of course, great stuff here, and I think it's really quite touching as well, the score to this, and just the way in which the kind of final act comes together, and the way it's scored as well, really wonderful. And as I say, just a great friendship relationship between these characters, especially Sully and Boo. So yes, a wonderful ending to kind of that brings this all together. And yes, that's it for now. Tell me your thoughts, of course, on Monsters Inc. Of course, I have seen the prequel as well, actually, and that's not very popular. But yes, this film, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on this. And I do, in that sense, I do look forward to checking out Monsters University as well. Again, I think it'll be interesting to kind of talk about. There's so many different films, Pixar films that are so unique. I feel, and stand out. And kind of have their own different thing to offer, and it'd be great to see what you think of this film, and how maybe you would roughly at least rank this among your favourite kind of Pixar films, or just Pixar, the entire Pixar ranking, perhaps, where this roughly would fit in. It'd be great to maybe hear that, if you want to kind of reveal that in the comments. And just, yes, talking about animation, or simply cinema, as always. It's always great to discuss with you viewers, and yes, I had a great time watching this one again, and certainly look forward to checking out all the Pixar films eventually. And if you've reviewed a few already, I won't be going back to them and reviewing them again, but we'll continue perhaps this kind of journey, these Pixar films, reviewing them. And yes, of course I have a few, as I've said, to kind of watch for the first time, including the entire Cars trilogy. So yes, there are quite a few that I haven't seen, but yes, of the ones I have seen, this is one of the great ones for me, and it'd be great to hear, as always, your thoughts. So as always, take care, and yes, thanks for watching.